Okay, fantastic. Well, welcome everybody. Welcome to Academy Healing Nutrition's Yin and Yang sample lecture and an open house today. We're really excited to be here with you this evening or this afternoon. We have people from both sides of the pond calling in today. So my name is Sophie and I'm the Operations Director at Academy Healing Nutrition, and I'm really excited to be here today with our wonderful tutor and founder, Roger Green, and our wonderful course coordinator as well, Savannah, who you'll be both hearing from in a little bit later in the workshop. So welcoming lots of new faces as always, as well as some regular followers and our dear alumni. As always, if you're on Instagram, our handle is @healingnutrition. So please do let us know what you're learning in the session and any thoughts you may have as well, as we really love hearing from you. We do have a Q&A and a chat box, so feel free to make use of either of those for any questions that do come up in the lecture, and we'll get back to you as soon as we are able to along the way. Okay, so if you wouldn't mind going on to the next slide, Savannah, I'll run through a little bit about what we're going to talk about today. So as advertised, the event will go on for roughly 2 hours with an opportunity for questions at the end of the presentation. For those of you who have not met us before, as advertised, this workshop is an opportunity for you to learn more about the Holistic Health Coach Training Programme for Academy Healing Nutrition, and for which our next cohort takes place this spring, starting on the 2nd and the 3rd of April. So you'll get hopefully a sense of who we are through this sample lecture, which will be followed by a detailed overview as well about our Holistic Health Coach Training Programme, as I know a few of you have had questions about it already. So we'll begin with a brief overview about Academy Healing Nutrition to give you an opportunity to get to know us a little bit better. And then we'll dive straight into our sample lecture all about Yin and Yang balance, particularly in for the new year, which is our sample lecture today with Roger. So we endeavour to share as much information as you as possible during the time that we have with you this evening. And then there'll be options for questions at the end interactively. But as I said, please make use of the chat box and the Q&A box in there during the lecture if you have any questions as well. Okay, so for a little bit about us, we are Academy Healing Nutrition. We are a healing nutrition school. Our curriculum was founded over 40 years ago by the incredible Roger Green, who we are very excited to have with us today. You'll hear a little bit more about Roger shortly. However, he's a holistic health pioneer and entrepreneur as well. And he's been developing incredible projects, academies, products, and technologies, all to do with holistic health and natural healing, and has also lectured in 70 countries for 40 years, over 70 countries. So Roger is also one of the key faculty members and one of our main tutors at the Academy as well. So our school is fully online with our HQs both in New York and in London. And what we offer in this curriculum is a 12-month holistic health coach training program. And this means that people who come and study with us for a year are then certified holistic health coaches upon graduating and can then go and practice as such in this field. However, there are many other routes available to our students as well, and different ways that students can apply the training, which we'll go into in depth a little bit later, but just a few examples now include launching businesses, creating retreats, creating products and packages. The options really are endless. So what we really like to offer and what we really like to honor really with this training is this idea of ancient and ancestral and Eastern wisdoms. So those traditions we've typically lost touch with, yet they had so much wisdom and they've been healing people for thousands of years. So we really honor and focus on traditional Chinese medicine and also the Taoist tradition. However, we also touch upon Ayurveda and macrobiotics, and we also look at cultures of longevity in the Blue Zone diets. We offer the opportunity as well to realize how all of these ancient ancestral traditions and practices were really in line with the way of nature and really in tune with the cycles of nature and the cycles of our body. So this is what we always try to do. It's coming back to the connection that was once with nature. And trying to understand as well how in this fast-paced modern world, we can connect back to those wisdom traditions, which go back further than 2,000 years, but also connecting to our own ancestral lineages as well. So, you know, thinking what our grandma was cooking in the kitchen, what tools she was using, what ingredients, So really connecting with our own histories there as well. So whilst we also honour these ancestral wisdoms, we're also very much on top of all of the latest nutritional breakthroughs, so you're not losing out in that sense either. And what's really beautiful about this curriculum is that it is very much holistic. So food as medicine is our ethos and our mantra. However, we incorporate more than just food. So you can learn about natural remedies, tonic herbalism, different body work like Do-in and shiatsu massage, home remedies. So it's a really, really well-rounded holistic curriculum that all connects, is about connecting the mind, body and spirit. It's also very practical. So our training is held live on Zoom, but it's also very practical. So whilst you're learning with us, you're cooking along, you're practicing making beautiful elixirs or home remedies, you're playing around with body work, getting your friends and family involved. So it's completely interactive. And the idea is that you leave the training with a holistic toolkit that basically enables you to take charge of your own health and also enables you to live a more aligned and fulfilling life for yourself, but then for others as well, so you can achieve all the things that you want to do in life. So that's enough on who we are for now, but I'll give you just a brief overview about me. Firstly, so you know who you're talking to, and then introduce you to the wonderful Roger. So as I said, I'm Sophie, I'm the Operations Director at Academy, and I'm also a graduate of Academy as well, having joined in 2018. So I came across Academy myself when I was experiencing several health conditions, including burnout, chronic UTIs, chronic digestive issues, inflammation, basically all over. And I've been working in a very stressful corporate role in human resources in London, and I had been seeing my GP regularly for several months without really any real progression of my understanding what was going on or even improving my health. It was kind of, you know, here's more antibiotics and, you know, let's keep getting rid of the infections. And, you know, for so long I was kind of taking them blindly without understanding the impact this was having on my health. And then basically one day the urologist who I was seeing for my chronic UTIs, I had them for over a year, and I was on antibiotics for that long as well. Basically I was seeing them and it got to the stage where they wanted to provide a preventative dosage of antibiotics to take daily. So that was just something to kind of prevent infections occurring in the future, not even to treat them. And for me, that was when I realized that I really had to approach things a little bit differently. And as if by magic at that moment, that was when I came across Academy, or Academy found me. So for me, when I began to work on my gut health and bringing my body back into balance, using the tools that I learned at Academy, I began to regain my health, my energy, my vitality, and just my desire really for life, and also my clarity. So for me, when that clarity came, you know, I decided that, okay, I needed to kind of hand in the corporate role that wasn't for me. And I transferred over to Academy. I was very grateful to be able to do so and to share this beautiful work that we offer and go on to basically help many people. So I'm now a holistic health coach as well as the operations director here. So the course was hugely transformational for me in my personal journey in terms of my health, but also for my path and my calling. You know, I realized my calling was sharing this work with others. So yeah, I was offered the chance to dive deeper into this work, and I grabbed it with both hands and have not looked back since. Yeah, so I think that pretty much sums me up. My role at Academy encompasses mothering this beautiful community of students, alumni, and our incredible faculty as well. And like me, a lot of students come to delve deeper into their health conditions, but other students simply want to develop themselves further or look for a different career perhaps. So there's lots of different opportunities. So that's enough about me, and on to the wonderful Roger who we have with us today. We're very grateful to have him with us. To give you a bit of an overview, Roger, again, is our founder. He's a modern holistic health pioneer who's been mastering and teaching Eastern and Western healing techniques for over 4 decades and across 70 countries. After opening one of the first alternative healing clinics in Sydney in the 1970s, he went on to teach holistic healing, traditional Chinese medicine, and longevity science as well to hundreds of students throughout our academy, and is one of our key faculty members here. He's also actively involved in the development of different technologies for natural healing, for longevity research as well, and renewable energy. So we're really, really excited to have Roger with us here today. So I'm going to hand over to him now to begin our sample lecture on the topic of balancing yin and yang. So welcome, Roger.
Hello. Can you see me? Oh, there you go. I can see.
We can.
Right. Well, hello everybody, and welcome to our study of Yin and Yang today. Yin and Yang pervades everything in obviously Chinese medicine, but there's other terminologies used in Ayurvedic, and also traditional people all over the world had this understanding that there's this essential basic polarity on the planet and in the universe, and it's something that you can actually witness in a very, very tangible way. And of course, we're going to be calling that yin and yang today. But just so you know, there's lots of other sort of terminologies that are used for these energetics, this energetic viewpoint. And historically, let's talk about where all of this began, of course, from sort of northern China, the Indus Valley, probably areas of Siberia and so forth, where about 10, 15,000 years ago, it has been said, because it was an oral tradition, that people started to gain this much more deeper understanding of the energetics of this beautiful universe that we live in. Now, if you were sitting around the campfire 15,000 years ago, on a fundamental level, you would have noticed that you were sitting on Mother Earth, and Mother Earth has her own vibration, right? Now, of course, in modern science, we've been able to really, really deeply look into that in what we call the electrical universe. So Mother Earth is sending out a phenomenal electromagnetic charge, right? And then, of course, if you looked above us, we have Father Sky. And of course, in terms of modern physics, we know that Father Sky is a phenomenal amount of energy that we're receiving like an antenna, right? Now, a lot of people kind of forget about that in our modern age because, you know, we're always living inside and we're rushing around on a very sort of horizontal plane all the time, you know, like career and paying the rent and so forth. And we forget about the sort of vertical connection that we have with the cosmos, in the sense that our body is perfectly designed to receive this charge of energy from the cosmos, which is a phenomenal amount of energy. On a tangible level, of course, we've got the yang energy of the sun, right? That's sending us not only sort of photons, but also millions of different frequencies that we're, you know, that we're sort of set at, right? And all of the planetary biology is actually set at to receive those particular frequencies. But beyond this, the sun's energy, there's this phenomenal amount of energy, in the sense that in terms of modern physics, if we were to just able to capture some of that, like in a little cup in front of us, that when you start to get into the quantum physics of that, if you were able to untangle this, what looks like to be an invisible vacuum in front of us, it's not. And if you were able to untangle that energy in terms of quantum physics, there's enough energy there just in this little cup in front of us to actually boil all of the whole ocean of planet Earth, right? So we actually, as modern people, we actually forget a lot about this cosmological charge that we live in. Now, so getting back to the sort of the history of this, then about, let's say 5,000 to 6,000 years ago, or around 2,500 BC and so forth, people were able then to start to, in a tangible way, write about this. And you might have heard about some of the classics that we have in Taoist philosophy. So you might have heard, for instance, of the Tao Te Ching, written by Lao Tzu, around, that was around, history goes around maybe 1000 BC or 500 BC. And that was like one of the first times that this oral tradition was put into a written context. And that is just an absolute beautiful book in its gracefulness and its simplicity of understanding the so-called Tao, right? The way of nature. So that's a term that we often use as Tao, or the path of nature, where we're witnessing this very, very rational idea of polarities everywhere in our life, and they're complementary and antagonistic, but we're able to witness this. And Lao Tzu put that down into just a beautiful, elegant book that has been one of the best sellers on the planet. Now, you might have even heard of the I Ching. Now, the I Ching is just a simple patterning of yin and yang, in the sense that there's a broken line and a solid line, and this energy notation, positive and negative, or if you like, a binary, on and off, like the modern computer. And it's said in the sense of the history of the computer development, this was done, first of all, there was a German mathematician, I think in the 17th or 16th century, and he was given a book of the I Ching from some of the early Jesuits that were in China. And he became obsessed with that. And he was the first in the Western world to kind of create this binary mathematics that actually went on to create computer language. So everything that we have got, not only in the universe, but in our day-to-day life, there's this underlying energetics of yin and yang going on, whether you like it or not, folks, because that's the way of the world. Then another classic that we often relate to in our curriculum is the Yellow Emperor's Book of Internal Medicine. Again, around, let's just say around a similar time, a couple of thousand years ago. And that was the first book where yin and yang was applied to the world of nature, the world of medicine, the world of taking this larger picture of the energetics of like heaven and earth. When I say heaven, it's not a religious connotation. If I use the word heaven today, it's this cosmological chi above us that we're receiving. And then, of course, earth, the great receptor that we're also receiving through the body. So the Yellow Emperor was the first written sort of dictionary, if you like, and philosophical understanding of applied to herbalism and food, right? And that tradition was called the way of the Yellow Emperor is the way of the stomach and spleen. So in Chinese medicine, we have the 5-element theory, which is just a breakdown of yin and yang. Everything comes from this core understanding of yin and yang, then it's applied to what we call the 5 elements and so forth. And that was one of the first books where the organ system, the colors, the associations, the emotions, the spiritual attributes was connected with herbalism and food, right? And we call that the school of the stomach and spleen because it was all about food as medicine and quite frankly, our digestive system where all of this starts. So that's a very, very strong focus of our one-year curriculum is to get people's digestive fire working again. So this understanding of yin and yang was then this core philosophical understanding of these polarities of life, which we're gonna look through some of those polarities in detail, so you get very, very familiar with that today. But then that was applied to what was called the 8 rays of Taoist understanding. And these were 8 practical modalities. So they were like food as medicine, which is what our curriculum really focuses on, because that's the foundation. The next one was herbalism, and we incorporate herbalism into our training via the culinary arts of being able to use certain herbs that have a very, very powerful tonic action on the body. The other modality was acupuncture and massage. So we actually incorporate to a degree some aspects of acupuncture in our curriculum, because we do study the meridian system to a degree, and acupressure points that are very helpful for a lot of common ailments. Right? And massage was another modality, and we do incorporate aspects, grounding principles of that, and some practical training with that in our curriculum through our Barefoot Doctor weekend, right? So you understand a bit of the mind-body connection. You get to know what was referred to as the Tandien or the Hara energy, this area around the belly button, right? Which was applied to martial arts. Now that's another modality that's from this core understanding of yin and yang, in the sense that this stylized, intelligent discipline of martial arts was established by the Taoists. And of course, other cultures had that understanding. It just so happens that in the Taoist tradition, it just got very, very deepened, right? And of course, that's where things like Tai Chi. Tai Chi is pretty much the mother of all of these martial arts, like Aikido and Judo and so forth, right? Or if you like, just yoga. It's a similar time in northern India, in the Indus Valley, etc. All of these ancient understandings were started to be collected and written about and applied in their philosophical pursuits. The other modalities there were meditation. So that was a separate modality. And when we say meditation in the Taoist tradition, yes, it was this understanding of developing simplicity, if you like, developing groundedness, developing the here and now. So it wasn't just like a meditative process. And of course, we do teach some aspects of that. But it was also that modality was also what a lot of people, when they just see our meditation, they don't realize that it was actually also the way of the mind. It was psychology, right? It was this sort of idea of being able to be a coach, this idea of being able to work with people in an intelligent way to help them on their pathway, to get them to kind of reorientate and recalibrate their life so that they can get back onto a life of health and vitality and purpose, right? And that's where a lot of the koans came from. You might have heard of what is the sound of one hand clapping and things like that. It was this idea of, this idea of like shattering the mind, the frontal cortex, to kind of get back to this energetic understanding and kind of break some of the illusions that humans start to develop through their life, through various traumas, emotional blockages, etc. Right? The other modality was Feng Shui. So remember, we've got these 8 modalities, right? And that was the yin and yang application to the environment, to your home, how to build a temple, a house, a village, how to embed that into nature so that that environment would be supportive of human community, right? And Feng Shui was, I call that the new kid on the block, because a lot of these Taoist understandings came into our Western culture just over the last 100 years. This incredible meeting of East and West pretty much started about, say, 200 years ago, where particularly the Jesuit priests in China were starting to bring back these manuals on the I Ching, and even Feng Shui. One of the original Feng Shui books came back into, I think it was the Netherlands in the 17th century. And acupuncture, especially about 100 years ago, it started to be seriously introduced into the West, but it didn't really sort of kick in until the 1970s. Australia was actually one of the first places to really do that because of the geographic closeness of Australia to China. And there were some early pioneers that got acupuncture training established pretty well in Australia. But at the same time, England and France were the pioneers of that. But that didn't really kick in until you had the 60s, kind of like hippie generation, where there was just this mushrooming of consciousness and awareness. And that was that generation that started to introduce things like macrobiotics. So macrobiotics was one of the first introductions through the writings of George Osawa, this brilliant and beautiful Japanese poet, sage, and political activist of our time. And he was active around the 1920s in France. He was one of the first people in France in the 1920s. I think Paris would have been just fabulous to be alive drinking coffee on the streets of Paris in the 1920s. You know, it was where all the revolutionaries were hanging out and all these amazing new ideas were happening. And he was the first to teach yin and yang application. And then he actually taught things like flower arrangement and all sorts of things to make a living. And but he also started to teach food as medicine and this yin and yang application, etc. Right? And then you had martial arts schools starting to develop in the 1970s, 1980s, 1990s. And Feng Shui came in as a wave in the 1980s. There's a lot of books on Feng Shui now. And of course, acupuncture and really good curriculums around training in Chinese medicine, like herbalism and so forth, right? And of course, meditation techniques have been around for many decades now, Taoist and Buddhist and yogic meditation techniques, etc. So, you know, in a way, we've had a long, long history of yin and yang for the last 100 years, say, of being slowly introduced into our culture. And now you start to find it in mainstream terminology. Have you noticed that, you know, you'd be watching a movie and then the character would say, oh, you know, that person's really yang. And you go, oh, that's really interesting that it's coming into our cultural understanding. However, the understanding is still very, very superficial in the sense that it's, yeah, everybody now kind of gets this idea that, yes, there's this underlying polarity to life that you can witness everywhere, male, female, hot, cold, up, down, energy above us, energy below us, left and right, etc. But not many people, of course, really get into studying that. So it becomes, so that it can become a really, really good tool, a personal development tool for your health, for you to be your own doctor, and to understand what seems to be random things happening, to start to understanding these underlying energetics to our human predicament, right? So that's why we make yin and yang a very, very sort of tangible study, so that you get to know this. And we particularly do that through with our students through food energetics. So they actually start to understand that you know, certain foods are yin, some foods are yang, and you can start to do some self-diagnosis with, oh, you know, you're too yin or you're too yang, too cold, too hot, etc. And then you can apply the energetics of yin and yang to make balance and harmony. And quite frankly, folks, that there are two words, balance and harmony, that we do not find boring at all. You study balance and harmony for the rest of your life, because that's the key to creating world for yourself that's healthy, vital, full of human purpose, and your ability to have clarity and so forth. It's this idea of how balance and harmony, because essentially for us, any kind of ailment, illness showing up is a message from the universe that you're getting out of balance, right? So when you start to get to know these yin and yang tools, you can eat a lot better for the season, and you can eat a lot better for your personal condition. And of course, we're going to look at some of that today. Okay, so that's a little bit of the background, the historical background of where yin and yang, that pattern language started to come from, and then how it was gradually, particularly over the last 100 years, how it was introduced into our culture, right? Now, so yin and yang, as you can see, are universal terms. That yin and yang image of the circle and these yin and yang forces, I don't know if we've got that in our slides, Savannah. We just got a simple yin and yang image in there somewhere. I don't know if we put that in. Let's have a look. Anyway, it doesn't matter for now. That if you just go back to that image there, you see that, I mean, it's a classic, all of this philosophy is put into that one logos, if you like, where you have the yang energy as the bright, rising energy of the day, and then you have the yin energy, the descending energy of the night, the evening and the night. And within that, there's a little dot that you might have noticed. So nothing is completely yang, nothing is completely yin. And yin is changing into yang as yang is changing into yin. So there's this natural cycle that's happening. Now, if you want to use different terminology for yin and yang, which we often did, by the way, when in the introduction, and thank you for that wonderful introduction, Sophie, I have taught in over 70 countries for, you know, and beginning, you know, many, many decades ago. And back in those days, you had to be very, you know, if some groups that you were talking with, you had to be very careful about using some more esoteric terms like yin and yang, because you get that sort of glazed look. Oh boy, what's this? What's this, you know, new age stuff or something like that. So I would often train myself to actually not use the words yin and yang. I would plant it in at the very, very end of the lecture, because there's other words that you can be using to an extent, like there's contractive energy and expansive energy, right? Now in science, you might remember back at your one of your early science classes, we had the term centripetal and centrifugal. And they're actually very, very good terms for understanding yin and yang, in the sense that there's this energy that's from the core, and then it expands out to the periphery. So it's this centripetal, sorry, you got a 50-50 chance of getting that one right, that centrifugal energy. So, and that's essentially what we associate with entropy. Now, do you remember that term in your biology class, where your biology teacher was going like, oh yeah, the mountain eventually breaks down, and they were in science, they're absolutely obsessed with entropy, in the sense that everything is going to break down and decay and so forth. And they didn't tell you about the opposite, the centripetal force that we have in the universe that actually keeps everything together. It's the energy that comes from the peripheral to the core back, and it concentrates and it unifies, and it creates the sort of the tangible order that we have, right? So if you want, you could also think about the sine wave, the simple sine wave, which we use everywhere in electronics and computer understanding, and you name it. The sine wave is used everywhere in terms of radio frequencies and transistors, etc. Well, that sine wave is your classic understanding of yin and yang. There's an energy here at its low point or low voltage, and it's going to rise to its peak, right? So that's the same as that yin and yang in a circle that you've got in front of you on the slide, but it's just done in a more linear way. It reaches its peak or highest voltage, if you like, and then it's going to drop to its lower point, and it's alternating between a low point and a high point, right? So you can also apply this idea of yin and yang into technologies, the understanding of the opposite of entropy, which is called neg entropy. There's a whole system of technologies now that's starting to be created around neg entropy, being able to get this sort of vibrational energy stronger into the core of the body. But we have that in food energetics. So just on a very, very tangible level, when that sort of central petal energy is strong, that's the food in your pantry that just essentially hangs around for years and years and years. If you notice, if you have a packet of salt in your pantry, you come back in 10 years' time, you've got what? Salt, right? If you even had a jar of miso, right? And you came back in 7 years, as long as there was no damp and water around it, you would have a jar of miso that hasn't gone off, and there's no bacteria, and it might have like a little yellow fungus on the top, which you can easily scrape off. Or if you store a bag of seaweed, right, it's going to be around for the next 3 to 4 years, right? If you store some grain, right, whole cereal grain, barley, oats, etc., you can come back in 30,000 years and cook that up or throw it into the field and it will grow, just like they find whole cereal grain in the pyramids of Egypt, right? They can, which is still intact, right? So in one sense, in our training, we get people start to get familiar with this philosophy of these things around them. They can start to recognize themselves in the sense that, oh, if that food stays around for just years and years and years and years, and it keeps its integrity, its coherence, that's probably a good food for me to eat if I want to stay around and have my coherence, my integrity, my intactness, my wholeness, right? And then there's other foods that decay very, very quickly, right? They have this more centrifugal energy, right? That's going to break. So they're the foods that you actually have to eat in a fresh way, and prepare them reasonably quickly when you purchase them within 2 to 3 days, that kind of thing, right? So it's a sort of basic understanding of centrifugal, centripetal. You can also apply all the sine wave or this positive and negative charge. But we like using in this training yin and yang because when you get an idea of yin energy, the whole sparkle of images go, okay, I get what yin energy is now. And then when you think about yang, you can get all of these dynamics of yang, right? And what we do is we start to clearly categorize yin and yang energies by using things like, well, if we study, for instance, if we studied, you had that slide to begin with, Savannah, like big and small, right? So if the category was size, yang is big, yin is small. If the category was something like directions, well, the area of the sunny side of your house is the more yang side of the house, right? And then, by the way, that was the original first writing of yin and yang was the yang is the sunny side of the hill, and then the yin is the shady side of the hill, right? So if talking in terms of direction, moving towards the sun, like in the northern hemisphere, that's going south, right? So that's always going to be more warmer for you, isn't it, right? That if you travel south, you pack a cotton shirt, right? If you travel north in the northern hemisphere, you're going to go towards the cold or the yin. and you're going to pack your heavier coat, right? So, and then if we thought the category of the season, right? So you just take that category first, and then you won't. Yin and Yang is a system of clarity, right? And it's actually a very rational tool. As long as you take one category at a time, and you don't start to cross over and compare a little bit of this in one category to another category, that's when the system kind of, for mental clarity, that's when it starts to break down. So just take one category like seasons, right? So what happens in the spring and the summer? That's your rising yang energy. That's where nature, springtime, everything's coming up out of the ground again, and all the herbs are growing, and your sense of sort of coming out of hibernation happens, and you go outside more. So outside is more yang, inside is more yin, right? And nature becomes a lot more busier in the summertime, and it reaches its peak in the sense of time now. It reaches its peak of yang on the solstice. The summer solstice is the longest day of the year. So that is the great yang in terms of your timeline, right? And then, of course, the opposite to that. So it reaches its peak, and then from that point, you've got that little dot of yin there. It's going to start to grow after reaching that peak, right? Everything gets to its extreme and then starts to turn into its opposite, right? This is the cycle of nature and the pattern of nature. So that's when the late summer starts to come in, and the fields start to get, the food starts to ripen, and then the energy starts to gather more towards the center, and that's what we call autumn time, right? Where the energy is starting to go into the sap of the root system, and inside of the plant and the tree, right? And our tendency is to start to gather more to get into preparation for winter time, which is that low energy time, right? Of like hibernation and so forth. So then if we were to take the same cycle of yin and yang and apply it to time on the 24-hour cycle, you see the same underlying dynamic happening, in the sense that morning time, that rising yang energy, is like springtime in the year. And of course, noon is the maximum yang time now during our 24-hour cycle, and that's like the summer solstice. So you have a larger cycle of yin and yang and a smaller cycle of yin and yang, and the only difference is scale, and that's what we call a fractal. So in nature, it manifests itself through these proportions and ratios and this fractal charge. Quite frankly, we live in a fractal universe, in the sense that there's a larger form of us, right? And there's a smaller form of us, and it's all the same thing, right? We're just one, right? In this infinite cosmos, we're all just this one, right? And so this fractal energy is a great way of understanding, you know, the unity that we have and these patterns that we have around us, and that we're the macro, or in the Western esoteric traditions, the sort of the macro versus the micro, right? As above, so below, in the sense that we're connected with these patterns, these frequencies, like an antenna, right? You can apply yin and yang to types of work. For instance, more physical work, more outdoor work, or somebody wanting to do more outdoor work is perhaps a little bit more yang in character, yang in personality. And for instance, we have yin and yang constitutional energies. In fact, we can get pretty good at that. We have these particular body types that we study in our curriculum, so that you start to understand your unique constitution in terms of yin and yang. Some people are a little bit more yin energy, some people a little bit more yang energy. They have these constitutional tendencies, so when they get out of balance, this kind of happens, or this kind of happens. For instance, if you're more yin, you get out of balance, you generally have this tendency towards getting cold symptoms, right? And if you have a more hot constitution, your imbalance often manifests as heat. So that's applied to body types and constitutional energies, which quite frankly is a great place to start, because if you want to eat for health, eat for longevity, eat for healing, right? It's quite important to understand these basic constitutional types. Now, we have that also in Ayurvedic. Some of our listeners here today might have studied some Ayurvedic books where you have the doshas, you know, the Vata, Pitta, Kapha, etc. And we combine that with Chinese medicine in our curriculum. We basically draw on both of these time-tested philosophies around understanding the universe and understanding herbs and food from Ayurvedic and Taoist Chinese, traditional Chinese medicine, right? They are the ones that were most, their knowledge just got very, very deep, and in terms of their writings, etc. That's not to say that we don't also study like Polynesian medicine and Native American medicine, etc. It's because it's all pretty much the same study in that sense. Okay, so applying yin and yang, we've done weather, we've done time, we've done seasons, we've done, to give you an idea of work, I mentioned that yang energy is a little bit more, somebody loves the physical work a bit more and wants to be outdoor, whereas the yin work is somebody who likes to be more mentally engaged. They might have to be sitting at a computer or writing or thinking a lot more, right? So you can apply this to exercise. For instance, even in yoga, have you noticed that there's you know, more gentle styles where there's perhaps a little bit more self-reflection and also meditation going on? So stillness is a more yin energy, and then active is more yang, right? So in yoga, have you noticed that there's some more active styles of yoga, even where they have a lot of the fire and the heat in the room? And then there's some more gentle styles, just like in martial arts, there's some more gentle styles or more inner styles, and then there's more outer, or and can be more aggressive and assertive styles, right, for protection. You have emotions, for instance, more outward emotions, like somebody getting angry and hot and short-tempered. That's a more outward expression. And then you have more inward emotions, like what? Feeling a little bit low-spirited, feeling like depressed, getting negative. Somebody's like negative all the time. We say, oh, that's you know, a bit more yin energy happening, right? And we have feelings in the body that are yin yang. You know, somebody that's like just over-activated and over-energized and overly talkative, right? That's very, very yang energy. Whereas somebody who's like just overly quiet and more passive and kind of needs to follow other people, right? That's a more yin kind of energy. And that can easily get out of balance in the sense of, in terms of health maintenance, we want to be, you know, independent. We want to be true thinkers. True thinkers is like you start to think about this yourself. You start to have an experiential side. You've applied some of these things in life, and you've actually come to learn something through your experiential side yourself. You don't have to rely on this person or that person or the, you know, the pharmaceutical profession or this profession, or even, you know, what you learn in school, or even what you learn in this curriculum, right? You start to actually experience and learn this on a deeper level, so that you become an independent, free person, right? And that's a balance of yin and yang, just right there, right? So then in Chinese medicine, we have food energetics, and we have health, personal health maintenance. So to give you a little bit idea of some of the common ailments of yin and yang, things like, if you could imagine, if somebody's saying, I'm feeling dry all the time, you know, dry skin, dry mouth, etc. So that's obviously the fluids being attacked, right? And we live in a very, very yang culture now, right? It's very, very busy. There's a lot of electromagnetic force around it. So think yang energy is a little bit more vibrational and visible sometimes, as opposed to yin energy, which is tangible. So my voice is more vibrational, and that's a more yang energy, just like electromagnetic fields, right? And some of those fields are quite negative, right? So if you're in an office all the time, around a computer, around all these electromagnetic charges, and then you're eating in a way that can even dry you out. So then the person starts to have all these, complain about these dry symptoms, brittle nails, dry skin, etc. So the principle of healing is that we have to do the opposite. We have to build up the fluids, build up the nourishment of the body, and use some yin building or blood building herbs for that, right? Then take the other situation where somebody might be complaining of, in a very simple way, wetness. So you've got dryness, that's a more yang imbalance caused by yang energy, lifestyle, not building up the blood, dry environment, etc. Then you've got things like wetness, where people complain of feeling like water retention, putting on weight, feeling stagnant, feeling heavy. That goes into what we call dampness. It becomes a bit like a swamp, where the fluids and the meridian system and so forth, it's not moving like it should, and there's sort of like this wet stagnation that starts to happen. Now that's a yin condition, and in Chinese medicine we're just really good at these conditions because we have herbs that are damp draining, right? We have cooking styles and foods that can drain that damp and get rid of that imbalance. So again, that's just another direct way of using food energetics. Now in food energetics, we categorize, yes, we begin with yin and yang. So think of it as a spectrum. So there's foods that we consider quite central to that yin and yang spectrum, like grains, beans, nuts, berries, etc., right? Which is a great way of starting. You just have to learn how to make them digestible, how to make them really, really tasty. Sort of like gourmet whole food cooking is a good place to start. And then you have this polarity of like animal food and vegetable food. Like animal kingdom is yang, it's active, it's red, and the vegetable kingdom is green, it's passive, right? And it's more yin nature. Or you have this polarity of like cooked foods. Whenever you use fire, that's more yang energy as opposed to raw foods. So our chemical patterning here is fire and water. So the more fire you use, the more yang energy is there, which can be very, very appropriate for what? When it's snowing outside and you want to keep your circulation alive and moving and making balance with that environment, because that's, at the end of the day, the definition of health is to be able to adapt and make balance with what's going on in your life, what the season is outside, etc. Then if it's hot outside and it's summertime, you want to change your food energetics, your preparations to be what? More lighter, more releasing heat, etc. So we call that a very, very tangible idea here. Spring and summer, you tonify the yang, the idea of this opening and expanding life force. And nature's doing that at the same time. It's got more of that energy happening, more upward growth, etc. Right? And it's hot, right? So your preparations can be more yin in nature, more vegetable quality, maybe some more raw food, etc. Right? Then in autumn and winter time, the energy you want to tonify the yin, you want to bring to this core, you want to tonify the core energy. So your deep resources are kept strong, etc., so that you can deal with snow and blizzards and cycling to work, in the rain and the cold, right? And so our idea with our students with that is to create radiant health, which is this idea that you can really, no matter what season, what circumstances, where you travel, what you do, you can always maintain your health and vitality by knowing these basic tools of yin and yang, in the sense that you get, oh, it's very, very hot, I can eat this because it's going to cool me down. It's going to take the excess heat out. Or it's very, very cold, I'm going to eat this to build up my yang qi, to keep that circulation alive and that fire alive. Right? We call that radiant health because it's beyond just the basic kind of basic health. Radiant health means that you enjoy stress, a certain amount of stress in your life. So what I mean by that is stress is a big killer. Modern stress is a big killer. We know that that's where, in terms of the emotional and biological connection, that's where a lot of inflammation comes from. And inflammation is the start of that whole degenerative process, right? So that we know. And of course, the longevity diet that we teach is an anti-inflammatory diet. So you get rid of that, right? And we teach natural anti-stress techniques, obviously, right? So you don't have to rely on, painkillers and all sorts of things, right? But there's this level of health that you get to after a couple of years of doing this, when you start to understand the three treasures, the elixirs, these powerful tonic herbs that we teach you, where your level of health gets above just normal, where you can deal with a lot more life challenges, right? Or you can start to extend yourself out of that comfort zone, right? And enjoy the process, right? If that makes sense. Anyway, we always say, follow your dream with that. Now, let's have a look at our slides here. So this was our first slide. Yang is big, yin is small. So yeah, yang is this idea of cosmic energy, and yin is this idea of earth's energy. So that's your basic sort of father-mother archetype there. And remember, we're like an antenna, and the yang meridians receive heaven's force, and the yin meridians receive Mother Earth's frequencies, and that radiates through us, right? And so we know that in modern biology now, right? In the sense of the science is catching up with what these philosophies said several thousands of years ago. So several thousands of years ago, they're going like, yes, we're just a manifestation of yin and yang, heaven and earth, father and mother, and we're picking up on all of that energy and it's flowing through us. Now, in modern biology, they finally recognize this, because in a simple way to explain this is, although it's fascinating reading, but the cell, if you get all of this right down to the cell, they've recognized the cell is responding to environmental inputs, right? So yes, hello. Yeah, we said that several thousand years ago, but now they can actually scientifically validate it. Think of it as like the cell is like a little antenna, and it has these like little feeling things. And then if you stimulate it from an outside source, it will respond, right? So outer and inner, right? In terms of modern biology, they're starting to recognize that, right? Okay, let's look at the slides, otherwise I'll run out of time, and we want to make sure. Okay, so I've mentioned the solar calendar. This was the traditional calendar that we had as human beings from the beginning. The longest day, the shortest day. I think you're starting to get this idea. If you look at that yin and yang image, the summer solstice at the top, the winter solstice is at the bottom. And then with that yin and yang image with the left and right, that's your equinoxes. Okay, the equinox is the equal day and the equal night. So the spring and the autumn equinox. So that yin and yang image immediately is your solar calendar. So that yang energy rising is the sun coming up on the east, and then the yin energy is the sun going down on the west. Right? So that image of yin and yang, it's basically describing everything in time and space, right? And what's with this direct relationship with what's going on in nature, which remember is the spiritual path of, and the personal development path of these ancient wisdoms like Ayurvedic and Chinese medicine, etc., is to actually start to have this direct experience with the pathway of nature. So we've done that. Let's look at the next one. Pretty much done that. And the idea of this, remember, was to demonstrate that you've got yin and yang on a larger scale and you've got it on a smaller scale. And it's the one and the same thing, right? It's this underlying energetics that's going on in the cosmos, right? And it's just a difference of scale, and we call that a fractal. And we also, another important term here is associative thinking, which you didn't really get in school, and they kind of knocked it out of you. You know, all that right brain imagery of bringing things together and seeing the connections and the patterns, often that's a little bit wiped out of us in our education system. There's aspects to our education system that really needs to be upgraded, don't you think? I personally think that it should be health, especially in this time of the last couple of years of the pandemic. Don't you think it's really, really important now that we actually have health dynamics taught in school with, kids at an early age start to learn about food energetics and anti-inflammatory diets and ancient wisdom around eating and all sorts of that. They don't do it because of the food lobbies and all of that, or all these other factors that come into play. Of course, as a parent and as somebody who's involved with smaller children, it's important that we do that ourselves, of course, right? But wouldn't it be wonderful to have that on a bit more of a community level where, in a time of pandemic, that the education around health and how to look after your immune system naturally and all of that is actually taught, right? Wouldn't that be wonderful? Okay, let's move on to the next slide. I think we've covered that. Pretty much did the seasons. I think people are getting this idea that this association, associative thinking is essentially connecting these patterns together. So the rising yang energy becomes what? The morning time, or it becomes the springtime. Get the idea? When you make that connection in terms of its associative dynamics, that's called associative thinking, and we don't have that. We have analytical thinking. So we need a balance between that analytical, which is breaking down and not seeing the relationship to the whole. It's breaking down it into detail, and breaking things apart, which, basically our modern medicine is based on. It's essentially chemical medicine. Western medicine is chemical, bless its soul. It's getting it right down to the various molecules and chemicals, etc., and not putting that back into context of the body and the ecology and so forth. Whereas the holistic approach is always making those associations, right? So that's the big difference. So we need a good balance between left and right brain, or yin type thinking, or yang type thinking, or if you like, more of a feminine approach and a masculine approach to our balance and thinking, and quite frankly, we are coming into the age of that where we're going to get really good at that, because we have for the last 100 years, and then since the 1960s, this flourishing of consciousness and awareness has started to look at East and West and masculine and intuitive, and started to investigate this idea of this balance. And that's where you have the world of functional medicine. All these young doctors in Europe and America and Australia, where they've healed themselves with diet and herbs and yoga, but they're doctors. They're starting to create this idea of functional medicine, where they are starting to be open to these associations and connections, etc., that are health supportive. So it's not just this one way of doing medicine. It needs to become a lot more holistic, right? for us to be flourishing as a human race. Let's keep going through the slides, Savannah. Knowing me, I'm going to run out of time. So now I remember I've mentioned this. It's one of the key things that you learn is spring and summer. It's this idea of, you do this intuitively. Have you noticed that spring, after the heavier cold months, where you've had a tendency to have a little bit more heavier food, more animal food because it's cold outside, more heavier fats, etc., to keep you warm, etc., that in the spring and the summer, especially when the end of spring, you really, when it gets warm, that you really lighten up your cooking. Have you noticed that the soup becomes lighter, right? It's not like a bean soup that's been cooked for 3 hours, right, back there in the winter months. And it's more broth-like and maybe a little herb floating around the top, and you crave a lot more lighter food and so forth. Whereas the tonify the yin in the autumn time, if you notice, that's when you crave things that are being cooked longer, more density, a little bit more heavier, a little bit more tonifying, etc. Right? And that's what nature is providing you. For instance, in the spring and summer, there's a lot more upward growth, right? And that's what's in the marketplace. Then in the autumn and the winter, there's a lot more root vegetables, right? Or round and root vegetables. So when vegetables are growing in the earth, right, which is dark and kind of moist, etc., that's a more yin dynamic, right? When it's growing above in the sky, in the heavens, in the yang force, that, for instance, growth, it's called doctrine of signatures. If you eat foods that are rising, then you take that energy that's sort of more upward lifting, relaxing to the neck, and it's rising in the body and it's healing to the upper part of the body. If you're eating foods that are from the earth and have that descending energy, then their energetic flow in the body is more grounding, strengthening to the intestinal region, and gathering, tonifying the yin, tonifying the core. So if there's anything that you take away today, it's this principle here, because it's one of the most tangible principles that you can apply straight away to kind of tune into what's in the marketplace, how you're feeling, and how you can change your food energetics through the seasons, because that's a very, very important part of traditional cultures of longevity, and Ayurvedic and Chinese medicine is really tapping into the seasons, because we have organ groups. We have the 5 elements, which follows the 5 seasons. Yes, there's this 5th season that we talk about, the earth phase, but that's the late summer, right? So spring, summer, late summer, autumn, winter, they're the 5 phases, the 5 elements, and they're associated with organs. Now, we have yin and yang organs. The yin organs are the blood-filled, dense organs, like the kidneys, the liver, the heart, the spleen, and the lungs. They're phenomenal to study, which we do quite well in our training. And everything in Chinese medicine is geared up for the health of the organs. You start to learn about the types of foods that are really good for the kidneys and the flavors. We have the 5 flavors, which are also yin and yang energies. For instance, bitter is the most yang energy for us. Bitter is what drives things into the body. It clears the arteries. For instance, if you've got cholesterol problems and all of that, well, that's easy. It only takes a couple of weeks to start to clear the arteries, and that's using bitter greens and so forth, right? And bitter tonics, because of their very, very powerful clearing, driving. Have you noticed, if you took or have ever experienced a Chinese herbal formula, you had a particular health problem and you went to a Chinese doctor down in Chinatown and they gave you a formula, have you noticed it's very, very bitter? And there's a good reason for that. When you drink it, it's because that bitter flavor is driving all of those herb energies and intelligences deep into your body. But the idea was salty is more descending, sour is more gathering, sweet is more harmonizing. So we look at the power of the taste in terms of yin and yang, and how they relate to the organ system. So as you eat through the seasons, you're starting to strengthen your deep energetics of your organs, right? So for instance, they are not a piece of meat, right? Kidney, liver, etc., which is what your education system taught you. They were, you dissect them under a microscope in your biology class and all of that. But no, that they're connected with your emotions, the seasons, with to a degree the way you drive your energies. Like some people have water energy strong, some people have wood energy strong in their life. They kind of constitutionally drive themselves that way. It becomes an aspect of your character and your personality and all sorts of dynamics. But on a tangible level, you start to look after your kidneys, your liver, your heart, your spleen, and your lungs. And you learn the foods and the energetics in that yin and yang cycle there in a very, very direct, tangible, physical, practical, daily habits, and even the way you spend your hard-earned money at the marketplace, you start to make those connections, so you start to strengthen those organs, particularly through the seasons. So that's why seasonal cooking starts to become very, very important for us, right? It's all about looking after your organs, guys, on a fundamental level. If you want more positive emotional energy, for instance, let's say if you're stuck in anger and frustration, then that's a liver problem, right? If you're sort of stuck in low self, what's the word, esteem, and feeling a little bit depressed, etc., that's your lung energy, right? If you're very, very fearful all the time, and it's really kind of knocking you out, it's becoming a major emotional blockage to like move into life and show up and do things and have a sense of adventure, that's your kidney energy. So in that 5-element framework of all of these associations, right, you start to learn those connections so that you've got tangible physical things that you can do over a week that starts to strengthen your organ systems, right? The way you spend your hard-earned money, the type of exercise you do, and it actually becomes very exciting and purposeful, and you become your own doctor and you're in charge of it. You don't have to rely on other people and specialists and another 20,000 books to read, right? You're actually doing this on a very, very connected way by understanding yin and yang, the seasons, the shopping, the foods, the color, the way they look. Is it red? Is it green? Right? It's very, very empowering that way. Right? Let's keep going through. So I hope I got the message across that cooking with the seasons is just very, very important. You've got these yin and yang organs. Remember, the yin organs are very dense and blood filled. So, and then the yang organs are open, receiving, right? Like the stomach and the intestines, etc. So even your body is just made up of yin and yang energy everywhere you look, right? Above, below, left and right. And then in the meridian system, there's the yin meridians flowing, and then there's the yang meridians flowing, right? And you might have studied that we've got these 12 meridians that are correlating this amazing vibrational energy of heaven and earth that we live in as an antenna, and your meridian system is correlating that charge, that infinite vibrational charge of planet Earth, the sun, our solar system, the galaxy that we live in, and the galaxies of the galaxies of the galaxies that we live in, right? This incredible fractal that we live in. Your meridian system is correlating that, making it coherent, and balancing it out all the time. There's a powerful intelligence there. So yang, so on a basic level, in terms of health maintenance, the yang energy in your life is your energy level, right? And that's more active during the day. So you need to have you need to be able to tap into your yang energy for your blood sugars to be consistent, for you to have the basic vitality there to operate in life, to fulfill your wishes and desires and goals and aspirations, and to be harmonious in your relationships and also to contribute to family, children, community, etc. You need basic energy for that. And that's what we call the yang energy, right? So that's, in terms of clinical application, if that's not there, that yang energy, by the way, is a circulating, warming energy, right? So a basic principle of health is that you should have good circulation, so you actually don't have cold hands and cold feet, right? Which is a very, very common ailment for a lot of people when they got their yin and yang out, right? And that they're not eating in a way that's creating balance. One of the first things that our students learn is how to deal with cold in the body, because we don't, in Chinese medicine, we don't like cold. And we also don't like excess heat, right? This is an absolute inefficiency, and it starts to create what? A lot of pain and a lot of agony, right? So you start to learn how to dispel the cold, how to build the yang energy with maybe a little bit more fire, with this herb, with this style of cooking, etc., to build that basic yang qi that you need to function during the day. And we're very, very good at showing our students how to deal with blood sugar problems, right? We know that one really, really well on a very tangible level, and what foods and styles to, you know, to bring that back into balance, right? On a fundamental level, this is not the low-fat diet, it's not the low sugar, it's not the low salt diet. It's an enzyme-rich, minerally rich diet, right? And so you really, really start to understand that kind of digestive process and how to build up your qi, right? And your blood. So on a tangible level, the yang energy is energy during the day that you need to tap into, good circulation, good mental clarity. That's the yang energy, your thinking ability, your sense of clarity, your ability to problem solve, your ability to think, your ability to think into the future, right, is a powerful spiritual attribute that humans have. And if you don't have that level of awareness and health, you're not good at that, right? For me, a very evolved person is you can look into tomorrow and the next day and plan for it really, really well. So on a very, very tangible level, I personally think somebody who's planning their meals in 2 to 3 days' time and they know what to shop for, and so that for me is one of the most evolved persons on this planet, right? And on another level, the way I classify very, very spiritually evolved people is not what robe you're wearing. That's part of it, sure. But it's your ability to be hospitable, to be able to make a beautiful meal for your guests and friends and family, etc. For me, that's the foundation of spirituality, right? Not often talked about. Now, your yin energy is the fluids, the moisture. We need an appropriate amount of moisture, right? When that gets out of hand, you become wet, damp, heavy, obese, sluggishness, right? And then kind of dull thinking and stuck thinking happens. So your yin energy is this whole idea of building essence, building deep Jing, J-I-N-G. And if there's one word that starts to echo when you learn it in our curriculum, it's this word of Jing, because that's your constitutional deep juice in life, which you have to look after if you want a long, healthy, long life. You know, if you want to live to 180, 220, 320, right? You might as well give yourself a good little thing to aim for there. You have to think about how to look after your deep juice, your deep Jing, your deep essence, right? And we show you how to use elixirs and superfoods and tonic herbs and basic cooking and what knocks out your Jing, lifestyle attributes, certain foods, so it just completely destroys your Jing, and that's like a short life, right? Might have been an exciting life, but it was short. So these clinically, yin and yang translates as qi and blood, right? And that's the fundamental clinical application of it that we use in Chinese medicine, acupuncture, herbalism, and so forth. And that's what you learn. You get really good at that in this curriculum. We have a weekend that's even based on you becoming like doing health assessment, right? And you can learn that in a weekend because it's these guidelines and principles, and you start to get yin and yang, and you got it. It's not like you have to study this at medical school for 7 years to get. In a weekend, you can start to become your own doctor, right? Straight away, because of this direct relationship with nature, the cycles of yin and yang, and starting to actually get it on a tangible level. You can see it, witness it, and observe it, and absorb it yourself. Anyway, Savannah, I better keep going through these. So I mentioned food energetics. So yang is warming, moving, stimulating. So the yin energy is something more active at night. So the yin energy, when it's fortified and nourished, then you have good sleeping. You feel calm, you feel centered, you feel earthed, right? So there's always a balance between yin and yang. On a fundamental level, you need to be able to have the energy during the day, and then you need to be able to sleep well, a nice deep sleep. If that's not happening, then your yin and yang is out of balance. The other immediate way to gauge yin and yang is if you have a polarity difference. We should be cool up here, and we should have warm feet. If you're more hot up here and you have cold feet, your yin and yang polarity is strongly out of balance. And if you have that symptom, then start to do something about it, because it just gets worse and worse and worse and worse, right? So that's an immediate self-assessment. How's your energy during the day? Is it moving? Is it warming? Is it stimulating? Is it, are you feeling activated, right? That's your yang energy. Then are you able to calm down, let go, relax, be centered, go into a nice deep sleep and rejuvenate your Jing energy during the night, right? Basic polarity of yin and yang there. So yin energy is calming, cooling, centering, the more downward, inward force. Yang energy is outward, moving, stimulating, circulating. Shall we go to the next slide, Savannah? Okay, and we did a little bit of health assessment in our session today. Yang can become out of balance. You can become hot, excessive, overactive, over-talkative. Yang energy can become aggressive and pushy, right? Some constitutional types are naturally a little bit like that, right? And then some constitutional types are a little bit more, they like to be a little bit more quiet, and they don't have to talk all the time, right? But remember, there's these constitutional tendencies that can happen in the hot type and in the cold type that you need to be aware of, right? Anyway, that's a good way. If somebody is just like hot all the time and they're agitated all the time, that's yang, too much yang, heat, right? And we have a lot of heating foods in our culture. For instance, chemicals in our food chain. We've got over 10,000 legal chemicals that they can throw into our food chain. Your liver has to deal with that, and your liver recognizes that, I don't like you, and it wants to fight it off, right? So that's called inflammation, right? So and then we've got like things like so much alcohol, right? People drink every day. I mean, come on, guys. Historically, I mean, if we did drink every day, like in Europe, sometimes, if you study their farming culture, they would have a very, very low alcohol beer, like less than 1%, right? And that was a fermented barley, basically. And yes, they would drink that because it's actually where they got a lot of B vitamins and all. You didn't get drunk. They would have that for breakfast and go out and work 7 hours in the field, right? So there's always been this alcohol fermented idea, but not like, 14% and 9% and all of that of alcohol that you're drinking every day. No, that's not a good idea. And that's very heating to the body. We also, as you know, have a lot of sugar. So ancestors never really had that sugar, right? And that sugar is heating, it's yang, it's inflammatory, and it causes a lot of problems. So that's the yang energy, right? And yin energy is the sort of inflammation that's associated with more yin energy, is the absolute poor quality of fats and oils, like the vegetable quality fats and oils that we've got in our culture now, which we never ever had, right? So one thing we've been teaching in this culture for 40 years is some of the dynamics from what's called the Western Price Foundation, this dentist in the 1930s who traveled to cultures of longevity. And we study that and we draw, and for instance, these people lived to over 100. Right? So what we do is we go, okay, what were they eating? Right? And we look at that and we put it into our modern lives, right? And one thing you'll see is this high quality fats and oils that needs to be seriously studied. And we do that in this curriculum because that's the way you build up your yin energy, your hormones, your essence. It's one of the ways of building up your blood, etc. Savannah, let's keep going. How am I going for time, guys? Okay, I've mentioned yin and yang organs. I think people are getting a take on that. So how am I going for time, guys? Can you just give me some feedback?
Yeah, we'd like to kind of wrap up soon so we can go on and talk about our training program. So you've probably got another 5 minutes.
Okay.
That works.
And of course, we're very happy to take some questions as well. I haven't looked at the chat box. Hopefully it's active. Hopefully people are starting to get a little bit like, oh, I've got a question. What does this mean? What's the connection? Let's look at that. But, you know, there's more inward emotions I've mentioned, and there's more outward emotions. So we can use yin and yang to describe everything in the phenomena that we're involved in this life, right? And by studying that and making those connections, you just get clarity, right? And you get tools to work with, right? It's not an abstraction, guys. It's not like, oh, I have to keep studying this sort of abstraction, which we have this tendency to do in the West. This is about connection, immediacy, day-to-day life, day-to-day patterning, organizing your life a lot better, doing your own medicine, doing your own healing, understanding these changes around us and making balance. So let's keep going through the slides so I can just check that I've covered everything that we want to do. Okay, I think I've covered that. Well, that's a beautiful image of yin and yang, isn't it? Keep going, Savannah. Okay, look, you know, I think I've hopefully given our friends here that have showed up today a bit of insight into yin and yang, and hopefully how to start studying it. I mean, don't you think if yin and yang is the way the cosmos works and your life works from life to death and so forth, I think it's a damn good idea that you start to study it pretty much straight away. Don't muck around, don't hesitate. You know, if you want an image of where you want to get to, you know, like you want that sort of health and vitality, and you want maybe to create a beautiful family, and you want more wealth, freedom, and the energy to pursue all that. Yin and yang is this little compass that you can learn straight away, and you can start to apply it straight away to get to those goals of fulfillment and joy and gratitude and personal development. So my advice to you is get on the bandwagon here, guys. It's a lot of fun. We have a lot of fun in this curriculum. We're very grounded. As Sophie said in the beginning, we have interaction. We actually do these live cooking events, right? Now, this curriculum has always been practical, right from 40 years ago. I've been running cooking schools, building them on the back of a truck, long hallways, and also, like, I think historically about 5 cooking schools all over the world, because you need that. You get the philosophy theory, and then to break those negative patterns, which are deeply ingrained in us, especially around food and all the sort of confusion around all of that, you need to break it with being around great cooking teachers, right? And witnessing, how is all that put together and how to get those flavors and those energetics out, right? And that's what we're really good at. We alternate between yin and yang, philosophy, practice, philosophy, practice, philosophy, practice, right? And that's what this curriculum is about, is grounding this information so you get it into your daily life. You get yin and yang into your daily life, right? And then you can let go of it because life starts to flow, right? But yes, you need to actually study this for a good year. It takes about a year, even if you've got a bit of a background. Like, we've had people do all sorts of training, naturopathic, even acupuncture, modern acupuncture. They don't get training in food energetics. And we've had nurses and doctors, but also have people who just want to get their own healing happening, and then they want to get involved with coaching. And coaching is one of the best career pathways. It's one of the most, expanding industries on the planet. You've heard of life coaching and all of that. Well, look, nobody does longevity diet coaching except for us, right? We're the ones that have put all of that into a package. You get to experience it yourself. You come from this deep place of being able to express this to other people. We take you on that pathway of how to put that into a career. If you want to, by the way, this curriculum is for everybody. About 50-50. 50% of our students are there for their healing. They want to be able to cook better for their children, safeguard their own health, their family's health, so that they don't get degenerative disease. And they want to have build their own consciousness up and awareness so that they can safeguard themselves and thrive, right? And that's what this curriculum does. And then the other 50% of our students are very motivated to use this as a career, to use it as a coaching career pathway, right? And there's a huge need for this type of education and coaching to get out into the community. So that's what we're about, folks. So I'm going to hand it over to Savannah and Sophie.
Thank you so much, Roger. That's absolutely incredible for sharing all of your wisdom. I'm just going to spotlight myself just so everybody can see me okay. There we go. Okay, well, thank you so much for that. That was absolutely beautiful. We've had some great interaction in the chat there and some questions to ask you in a little bit. And thank you again for just showing us really just how present yin and yang is in all areas of everywhere, really, and everywhere in terms of the universe, but in terms of our own lives and our own bodies as well. And particularly as we transition into this new year, we can really invite you all, therefore, to really look at these yin and yang energies as a way to create balance for yourself versus pushing yourself with different goals. So think of all the elements that are present in your life, your diet, your energy. Try making a list of all all the different areas in your lifestyle, your work, your exercise, and see if it's more yin or yang. So, an example there with exercise would be, are you always doing these high intensity HIIT classes and boxing and running and things like that? Or are you doing more yin yoga and Pilates and more kind of, more relaxing practices there? So it's a slightly more gentle way of setting your intentions for this year. And hopefully you've all learned something today then, and you've enjoyed our sample lecture on yin and yang balance and receiving an insight into the type of content you can really learn with us at Academy. So we'll just go into the training now to give you a bit of an overview, a bit more about what you can learn in our different modules, and then we'll answer your questions on yin and yang towards the end of the presentation. Okay. So we are, if you could just go back, Savannah, to our wonderful team. So we're very blessed to have an amazing faculty who have such a depth of wisdom and a variety of wisdom as well, and who've been teaching holistic health for decades. So on the top row, we have our tutors, or wisdom keepers, as we like to call them. So Inga is one of our key faculty members, and she's also our student mentor and a graduate from Academy from many years ago. So after graduating with us, Inga went on to specialize in plant medicine, herbalism, Taoism, and she's incredibly knowledgeable in these fields, but also went on to study many others as well, such as craniosacral therapy, movement medicine, and is also a meditation teacher, so a variety of practices. We've been fortunate to have Inga as a faculty member for several years now, and she teaches our interactive cooking classes, so our fermentation module, our cooking module. She also teaches our tonic herbs and elixirs module as well, and she mentors our students on all of their final projects. So she's a wonderful faculty member. We also have Nam, who's another incredible faculty member, and he's an ordained priest. So having grown up in this incredible world and in a monastery in Taiwan, he's also a practitioner of all 8 limbs of traditional Chinese medicine. So meditation, exercise, diet, herbology, astrology, Feng Shui, massage, acupuncture, everything. He's an incredible asset to us, and he's a specialist and renowned chef as well in traditional Chinese medicinal cuisine in the San Fran area. And he leads our Cooking with Chinese Herbs module. We also have Letha, who is also incredible, and she has a very unique background, specializing both in traditional Chinese medicine and Ayurveda. And she has written several books on the topics, and has also she teaches our Ayurveda module. And then we have the lovely Eden as well, who teaches our holistic business module, and she's also a graduate of Academy. You'll see there's a theme here. And then we have our team, our wonderful team who work so hard behind the scenes to make all of this happen. We're a very small team, but all of us graduated with Academy, and we're all really passionate about what we do here, and we truly believe in what we do, and we really deeply care about all of our students. So Amelie is our marketing coordinator, and Savannah is our course coordinator and helps guide our students through the program. And then we have our wonderful co-founder and our London HQ, co-founder of our London HQ, Patricia, who looks after us all so dearly with all of her heart. So we're very lucky to have a wonderful bunch who we'll work with to make all of this happen. So to give you a bit more information about the course, so as Roger mentioned, it's a 12-month training program that consists of 10 modules that are delivered over the first 10 months. So 1 weekend per month, delivered over a Saturday and Sunday. And they start at 1:30 p.m. GMT and end around 8 p.m. or EST times. They begin around 8:30 in the morning, and then they close around 3. So they're delivered live on Zoom, but again, you can attend the recording instead if you can't make one of the dates, or if you'd like to review the content again, you always have that recording available to you. And then the last 2 months in the year are dedicated to our student projects, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And the idea is that the course is purposefully flexible, so you can study it alongside working full-time, or alongside childcare, or even studying elsewhere as well. So it's purposely designed to be studied alongside other items. And then we've already touched on our curriculum a little bit in general, but I want to give you a bit more of a breakdown about how the content is delivered through each of the modules. So you can see on the next slide, Savannah, you'll be able to see what you can learn really in each of the modules. So the course is designed so that we have 5 theory modules and 5 practical modules, as Roger spoke about before. And the idea is that this is the way that students can really learn to understand, yet also embody their teaching, their learnings and our teachings firsthand. So the first module is the Introduction to Longevity Diet, and this is really our introductory module to the main theories and frameworks behind the curriculum. So Yin Yang theory is a huge aspect of that, which we've learned about today. We also look at various other items, including food energetics and 5-element theory, and really these foundational concepts within the Eastern traditions, and the longevity approach as well, which we've spoken about. So this is what we call the longevity diet, but it's less of a diet, it's more of a lifestyle and an approach. So we teach students as well, looking at things like thermal natures, which you've heard about today, directions of yin yang, and special qualities of foods and food energetics within that as well, and the particular items of foods that fall within the longevity diet. And then module 2 is our first cooking module, led by the wonderful Inga. And this is where we start to apply the knowledge practically, the knowledge that we've gained within module 1. And this is when we get into the kitchen for the first time and really start to learn how to make these really nourishing and healing dishes using these frameworks that we've learned. Then module 3 is the health assessment module, which you've touched upon very lightly today, but it does go in a lot of depth about how we can really assess our own health and that of others as well. So this is where we identify deficiencies and excesses, the different constitution types which have been introduced to today, and how we can really recognize these patterns mentally, physically, and spiritually as well. So with these skills, we're then able to understand how to treat imbalances naturally. And so using food as medicine, which is a key factor of our curriculum, but also herbs and lifestyle practices and home remedies. And then we have module 4, which is our second cooking module with Inga. And this is where we learn how to make some really nourishing and healing broths. And it's all kind of everything fermentation. So it's everything related to gut health and the earth element, which is related to the functioning of our spleen and stomach. So this is where we look at how the gut relates to all systems of the body and how we can treat this with foods and herbs, specifically learning about fermentation and how to make these foods at home yourself. So we also make things like kombucha, kimchi, or beet kvass, which is a lesser known fermented beverage, but also some kind of delicious tomato bruschetta, as well as bone broths and fish stocks. So it's a really great module. And then module 5, we have our Barefoot Doctor module, and this is where we start to learn how to bring in even more supportive lifestyle and bodywork practices into our world. So this is where we learn traditional home remedies such as the famous ginger compress, which is fantastic for kidney health and a great one to introduce now when it's winter and very cold, particularly in the UK. And this is where we learn things like acupressure points as well, and the meridian system, moxibustion therapy, mindfulness, breath work techniques, Doin, shiatsu massage. So it's a really hands-on practical module, and it's a great one to get your friends and family involved with. And then the 6th module is the herbs and tonics module. And this is where we really learn to make some beautiful elixirs. So using medicinal mushrooms, adaptogens, superfoods, made in the traditional way, of course. And this is how we can really support our health on a very deep level and nourishing our foundational health. Then module 7, we have our advanced longevity and supplements module, again, led by Roger. So this is where we start to incorporate more of the Western approach as well, looking at some more modern research on health supplements, you know, really the latest research on all longevity supplements and technologies as well, and certain protocols we can use. And yeah, so that's a great one as well with Roger. And then module 8 is our cooking with Chinese herbs module with the lovely Nam. So this is where we get to take the opportunity really to go a little bit further into studying herbal practice. So not just learning what herbs are good for, and even taking them as teas, but how to incorporate them into these really lovely, nourishing dishes. So incorporating them into your everyday meals, but using traditional recipes and cooking methods at the same time. And one of the key things that we make here is our very healing congee or juk, which is a beautiful rice porridge with some really healing ingredients. And we also make some lovely soups and broths and things with Nam there. And then module 9 is Ayurveda, led by Letha. And Letha, as I mentioned, has a really great knowledge of both TCM and Ayurveda. So this module is really unique in that it combines the two systems, and it kind of looks at how they can be understood against each other alongside each other, and then how to combine them within your own healing practice and that of others. But then we also look at Ayurvedic principles, obviously looking at the doshas and in a great detail, the different constitution types, particular herbs in Ayurveda and lifestyle practices as well. And then finally, we have our module 10, our holistic business module with Eden. And this is where we focus on how to set up your coaching business from scratch. So by now we have our coaching skills and nutritional knowledge, and this is where we pair it together with the business knowledge as well. So looking at pricing, SEO, brand identity, marketing strategies, and the legal side of businesses. And the idea here is that, you know, by the time that you do graduate at the end of the year, you're ready to get started straight away, and you understand how you can make this type of healing work lucrative and a successful business opportunity too. So Savannah, if you wouldn't mind clicking onto the next page, we always like to show some pictures of recipes you can expect to make with us during the practical sessions as well. So Savannah, would you like to share a little bit more about these?
Yeah, of course. So it's always helpful to see some visuals for what you've heard about. And like Sophie said, these are some of the really nourishing and healing recipes that we make together. As you can see, we've got a really healing miso soup. We have one of our staple porridges that we teach students how to prepare, all the way from soaking the grains properly and how to use traditional methods to properly prepare their foods as well for, you know, optimal digestion and nutrition too. So we teach these practical modules, and we go through all of the tips and tricks from the very beginning to make sure that you've got the practical skills to really implement this knowledge in your life. So the top, we've also got the bok choy and the fish dish, and some desserts as well. So we go through all the meals. It's not restrictive in terms of what we cover. We talk about all food groups and all meals, and we really like to equip you guys with the skills to enjoy your food too. So here are some pictures from our students so far, which look amazing. And I know sometimes people see these pictures and they think, oh, maybe I don't cook, I have no experience, I don't think I can make that. It's totally fine. We guide you from the very first step, and we have people join us who have never been in the kitchen before. We have all different types of experience levels, and students come from all different backgrounds. So whatever you're coming with, we'll teach you from the very beginning, and you'll be amazed at the things that you can make. So you can see again, one of our amaranth porridges, our lentil stews, our miso soups, and gamasios that we make by hand. So some really beautiful dishes that our students have made so far. And here are some more, like Sophie mentioned, we have a module that really looks into fermentation. So you can see on the left, we've got some of those dishes. So the fermented bruschetta and the kombucha and the kimchi. And you can see that students shared their pictures with us in a Facebook group and has got a serious addiction now after learning how to do these things for yourself. And on the right, you can see the valley soup, which is a really special dish that Nam shares with us when we learn cooking with Chinese herbs. And you can see the red dates in there and the different herbs, all in this really healing soup that Nam teaches us to do in module 8 from the Taoist tradition. And we've got some more where you can see really how we implement herbs and tonics into these dishes. It's not just things that we use in supplement form or tablets. It's really learning to work with them every day in every meal. And you can see some more pictures from our students here, and the home remedies that they work with as well when we go into the Barefoot Doctor module, another one with Roger, which is amazing. And you can see from their comments that this year for students is also about themselves and their own health. So when they go through the full year, you go through all the seasons, and you know, maybe sometimes you notice, like Roger said, your yin gets out of balance or your yang is a bit deficient, and you've got the tools now as you go to tweak that and to be your own doctor, like Roger said. So you can see this student on the left has got to grips with the compresses that we learned too, another really healing aspect of our body work, and home remedy techniques to go alongside the ginger tea and the miso and the things like that. And then these pictures are from one of our modules with Inga, who is our cooking teacher, who also does a whole weekend on herbs and tonic elixirs. So you can see we've got things like matcha latte that has pearl and different herbs, kind of like a beauty drink. But then we've also got drinks for fatigue and for better energy, things like the goji berry one in the middle, and in the bottom we have the whole Romania herb, which we learn to do from scratch, the whole decoction, and make that really special elixir too. And even things like a chaga chai latte and things that people can substitute coffee, and maybe things that they're trying to wean out for the new year, or maybe just cut back on. You know, if you can tell, maybe I've got a bit too much heat in me right now and coffee's really not helping with that, that we share some really cool drinks that you guys can bring in to replace that, and they look beautiful too. And here are some of them again from our students. So what we like to do is, when we have a practical module, we'll cook along together live in the weekend, but for anyone who doesn't, or as you guys continue to experiment with them afterwards, we like to share our pictures together on the Facebook community. And these are some of those goji berry lemonade and the jujube date tea and the matcha pearl latte, again, that students have been trying at home. And some more here, and you can see some of their comments too. The taste is really rich and earthy, could definitely feel the burn of the ginger, getting to understand how the tastes work in the 5-element theory too, and understanding putting in more yin or more yang into your body. And then on the right, this is something really cool that we do every year, which is the Schizandra challenge. For 100 days, we challenge our students to get to know this individual herb, Schizandra, and just take that every single day for 100 days and see how it affects you, and see how you can really get to know that herb by itself, and feel the benefits with that consistent use. And you can see people's comments here: cannot begin to explain the wonderful things that this magical herb has done for my body on day 38. Feel like they're back in their element, having the energy to be doing. On day 24, one student feels more focused, more clear-headed, face is glowing. All these physical, mental, spiritual improvements from one herb, and it's a really special journey for you guys to do something like this within your training, where you can really go deep with one herb and understand the benefits yourself. And some more pictures from our students cooking, which all look super professional, but like I said, this is just people with little to no cooking experience sometimes. So you can see we've got some juks here that we make with Nam in the practical module, cooking with Chinese herbs, and you can see how all these different toppings are incorporated, these lotus seeds and jujube dates and some really amazing TCM herbs in there. So yeah, that was some pictures from our course. And Sophie, did you want to take it away just to wrap up for this bit?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Savannah. That was wonderful. So who is this course for? I mean, firstly, I always say, who isn't this course for? Like I mentioned before, we have a very global cohort, an international cohort, and we welcome students from all backgrounds and professional skill sets and diets as well. I saw in the chat that there was a question there about, would we be able to attend the course as a vegan? And absolutely, we welcome people from all backgrounds and all our dietary requirements as well. What we say is, if you are a vegan or a vegetarian or even a meat eater, we'll just show you how to do it better. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question there, Anna. But yes, so basically, if you wouldn't mind just clicking Savannah, but so much of what we are used to now is really treating illnesses. But what we can do is to give an approach to healing that isn't masking symptoms, but is getting to the root cause instead. So really getting to that deeper sense of healing. So it can be for those who are looking to heal themselves or that of others and want to get, just get their body back into balance with their lifestyle. The idea as well is that it's not only incredibly empowering for everybody who goes through that journey, but it's also then something that really enables you to align with your purpose and gift. There's also a huge gap in the system nowadays with the medical doctors who don't have time to coach you. I think they're given 6 minutes for a consultation. And the food companies that provide too much information and so much confusion and misinformation as well. So there's no one really there currently at the moment who can guide people with the care and guidance that they need and deserve. That's going to enable them to discover using the power of food as medicine and to really heal themselves on that deeper level. Especially now as well, while we're in the world with the pandemic highlighting just how fragile our health can be, and it's really provided even more of a need of this work. So Savannah, would you like to keep clicking through? We've got a couple of slides there. So yeah, it's for people who want to recover from any degenerative illnesses or support others as well, which is a really key aspect of becoming a coach. Okay, Savannah, would you like to click on to the next slide? And then this course will enable you to coach clients on healthy eating, to lead cooking demonstrations, to host group workshops, to set up a blog on holistic health or write books. You have a real variety of items there that you are able to go into and do basically and apply this knowledge in the working world. And there's such a need to, particularly nowadays with working in corporates, and a lot of corporations really want to invest in this work, even in kind of the human resources or kind of externally, but also internally within their corporations as well. There's a huge need for this nowadays. So Savannah, keep clicking. So you can also lead health food shop tours as well. So not just coaching clients, but kind of embodying this learning as well, and teaching them and teaching others, walking them through it and showing them what foods they can pick, taking them to markets and food, health food shops as well, and also giving cooking classes as well, like we mentioned. So there's a variety of areas that you can really apply this learning. You can launch a business as well. There's loads of different business opportunities there. So, that's through retreats, any of these options as well that we've spoken about before, the cooking demonstrations, whether live or online, cooking programs, or you can even enhance your current career as well, whether that be a nutritionist. We've had loads of nutritionists and even doctors who have come and studied with us, because they don't really have that learning and that knowledge of really how to use food as medicine and herbs in that way as well. But we've also had a variety of chefs, psychotherapists, so it really is endless in terms of the students that we welcome, but also then the opportunities you can take out of this. Next slide, please, Hannah. Okay, and so to give you a bit of an overview about what some of our graduates have gone on to do since graduating with Academy. So the wonderful Cheryl, who graduated with us in 2020, she worked as a holistic health practitioner in London, and her practice really focuses on food, but also particularly on sleep and movement practices, so this embodiment as well, and really balancing the masculine and feminine energies, so that yin and yang energy that you've heard about today, nurturing relationships and self-embodiment. So she has various programs that she offers. You can see there's either 4-week, 3-month, or 90-minute cooking classes as well. Next slide. And then we have Halidor, who was a chef, and he's worked at various medical and wellness centers as well as several renowned restaurants in Iceland. So that's just another way that you can apply this training. And then we have Christina as well, who's come from the yoga background. So she incorporates her food as medicine knowledge and her knowledge of home remedies and everything she's learned on the course, and incorporated it with her yoga background. And so now she teaches clients, supports them with breath work, meditation, and her key focus as well is kind of women empowerment. So she's another one who's had a really successful business afterwards. Next slide. And Fleur's a nutritional therapist as well. So that's just another way that Fleur came with us. She had a long background in nutrition, and particularly psychoneuroimmunology. So she's had a huge background here, but it was a slightly different approach for her. So she's learned that through her studies at AHN. This enabled her to add a bit more of a practical aspect to her teaching. Okay, next slide. And then Lily as well. So she has a focus on celiac disease as well, and Hashimoto's thyroiditis. So she really coaches clients on how to live with a gluten-free diet, and she has one-to-one coaching. Next slide. Okay, so here we have some incredible feedback from our students. We're always so grateful for all of our students and the wonderful time that we spend together in Savannah. I know you work with them very, very closely, and they're very dear to you. So would you like to just read some of the comments there from the students, and perhaps here would be a great opportunity for you to just give a little bit of a background just on what brought you to Academy.
Yeah, for sure. I always love this slide with this picture because this is taken from my class in 2020, and it's just great to see just how much the year means to people, and that was really a big reason for me joining the team and wanting to continue this work and just hold space for people to go through this year and learn this knowledge and implement it in their own lives. For me, I actually came from a kind of different background. So I was studying fashion at uni before I came to Academy, but I was really kind of focusing on traditional crafts and traditional textiles. So for me, traditional medicines kind of just fell as like the next piece of the puzzle. And I've always had this interest for kind of ancestral connection and cultural arts and things like that. So personally, I joined for that reason, but I think wherever you're from, it's just human nature really that it comes down to, like Roger said. All of these traditions in a way are kind of very similar, if not the same. They're coming from the same source, and everyone has this kind of innate yearning just to come back to nature and learn to heal themselves and learn to be their best self. So you can see from these comments just how much the year means to people and how much the modules impact them. A beautiful weekend sharing this space with you all and sharing your wisdom, Inga. And you can see like how much the community and the connection is a big part of our course too. So nice to feel like I found my tribe. Thank you everyone for being here. Just real gratitude, not only to the teachers, but to your peers and the other people that you go through this year with as well. So what's included in the course if you are feeling ready? Obviously you've heard a lot now about the content and the modules and kind of the structure of the year. So alongside those 10 modules, we also offer bonus workshops throughout the month just to check in, to ask Q&As, to kind of digest what we have absorbed in the weekend modules and to keep that connection between your cohort going too. We have these interactive cooking classes. So like Roger and Sophie have mentioned, it's really emphasized to be practical with this knowledge and not just hold it in your head and be able to, you know, speak it to people again, but to really embody it and to live it as well. So you receive 300 plus recipes for natural remedies and supplements, 500 pages of digital workbooks, and we keep all this content on an online classroom that you guys have access to for the full year. You also receive 2 private mentoring sessions with our instructor Inga, who you saw in the team slide. So you get the opportunity to really work one-on-one as well. And you can use that time with Inga to talk about, you know, your business idea or your experience with the course so far, or personal healing, things like that. Study buddies and networking, like I said, the community is a big part of what we do here at Academy. So we like to keep that a real strong aspect of your studies too. And we have an online community, the group forum on Facebook, where we share everything with each other throughout the year, what we're cooking, what we're trying out, things like that. You also receive exclusive discounts to different wellness brands that we partner with. And alongside all of this and much more, you do get your internationally accredited health coach certificate too. So if you are feeling called to, you can use this knowledge to shift careers or to launch a business or whatever feels right for you in the moment. So the investment, the all-important investment for this course, you can see as a global school, we offer payment in pounds or in dollars. And you might know that we are currently having an early bird offer too. So for our course that starts in April, if you enroll now, you are eligible for this. And you can see the 2 payment options on there for both currencies. So you can pay monthly with a deposit. So for example, in pounds, that's 12 installments throughout the year of 358.80 and a deposit of 650, or you can pay in full at 4799. And you can see the payment in full does save you slightly more. So if you would like to do that, that option is also there. But both payment options are discounted for early bird. So you can see there the figures for the maximum amount you can save. And then we can also go over the accreditations. Obviously, if you are looking to coach, you guys would like to know we are internationally accredited. As a global school, we have students all around the world, and our students work globally. And we are accredited by the American Association of Druggist Practitioners, the International Practitioners of Holistic Medicine, and the International Guild of Complementary Therapists. And we're always adding more to this list too. So if you are interested in applying, I would love to support you in that. And you can email me here at savannah@academyhealingnutrition.uk. Our spaces are limited and we do cap at a certain number to keep the classes small and intimate. So if you are ready, then please do reach out and I can get you all set up and supported in however you need. You can also apply directly on the website, just at academyhealingnutrition.uk/apply. And you can learn more on that same website about us there.
Thank you so much, Savannah. That was beautiful. So are you ready for a fresh start? I always really like to read this quote as it represents so many of our graduate stories with us. So the Academy of Healing Nutrition was surely one of the best decisions I have made in my life so far. And that was certainly the case for me. And I won't speak on behalf of Savannah as well, but yeah, we've had a wonderful experience and we would love to welcome you into our beautiful community. So the time to take charge of your health and that of others is now. So if you're ready to take the leap, then do let us know, be in touch, and we look forward to hearing from you. You can either book in a call with Savannah or I directly, or correspond on email if that suits you better. So thank you all for joining. Thank you so much, Roger and Savannah. We do have a little bit of time. We have gone over a little bit, but we do want to answer some of your questions. So Roger, are you ready for some questions?
Well.
Wonderful. So there was one of the questions was, when eating for teeth health and healing, what would more yin or yang foods be needed? So for your teeth.
So we eat yin and yang foods. Obviously, there's a balance there that's required. But to put that into a better context, you should be thinking about a minerally rich diet. As you know, your teeth are made up of minerals, and if you're eating a lot of sugar and stimulants and quite frankly, even a lot of fruit, fruit is very yin, and fructose sugar, all of that is going to dissolve your mineral base. Now, in Chinese medicine, the water element, the kidney energy, controls the bones in the body, the yin and yang balance. Essentially, even your brain, your gray matter is just an outbirth of the kidney Jing energy that runs up your spine. right? And so the teeth, for instance, the wisdom teeth coming out around 7-8 years, etc., is the last surge of your biological constitutional energy, right? And we all have these biological cycles. The masculine cycle is an 8-year cycle. The feminine cycle is a 7-year cycle. We'll study that more of that later. And your teeth are seen as essentially just like bones in the body, right? So just like if you have a high sugar chemical inflammatory diet, you'll get osteoporosis and tooth decay and all of that. And this is one of the things that Weston Price studied. Weston Price, who I mentioned before, he was a dentist. And in the 1930s, him and his wife every summer, would travel to cultures of longevity. He was able to do that for a good 10 years of his life. And so he was obsessed with dental health. That's how he started to do these amazing studies of these cultures of longevity. And so what he simply discovered is, as soon as these people would, maybe for economic reasons, would travel to and start to eat the westernized, industrialized diet, they'll get all the health problems associated with us, like diabetes and tooth decay and so forth. And if they stuck to their native diet, they wouldn't have these problems. So in a nutshell, the longevity diet is a minerally rich diet. It supports your gene, and it supports your bone energy, which is your bones, your teeth, etc. That's your constitutional energy. So you know, and essentially, there's always yin and yang. It's not like the thinking, oh, should I have a more yin diet or a yang diet? You're always combining these yin and yang energies into the types of foods that you're choosing, the amount of water, the fire, all of that is the balance so that you make good digestion. So in a nutshell, when you start to have a minerally rich diet, an enzyme-rich diet, and you're able then to strengthen your digestive system, your body will heal itself. You don't actually have to overthink about it. Your body will actually start to get those minerals back into your bones, back into your teeth, etc. So in a nutshell, you really want to watch out for an excess of, obviously, sugar and fruit sugars as well, like fruit drinks and all of that. Well, you know, traditionally, you know, when you study cultures of longevity, when people really had to eat with the seasons and what was available in their bioregion, sure, there was some trading going on, you know, with salt and various foods, etc., seaweeds, etc. But you know, fruit would come out for like a couple of weeks in the summer. They would binge on it like crazy, right? And then it was gone, right? So historically we did have a very, very low simple sugar diet, right? So now, of course, we can enjoy that, but there's ways of balancing. So whenever we get involved with the more simple sugars, we always like to get those minerals back in there to just provide those minerals again, right? So you'll notice with some of the recipes are very balanced with yin and yang, if you like to think of it that way. You know, we're always kind of combining yin and yang into a balance, into a harmonic, right? Which will have a therapeutic action to it as well. So hopefully, with the time that we've got, I hope I've given you some sort of perspective on that problem. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Roger. We did have a few other questions. So where the polarities are out of balance, so cold hands and feet, or with a warm head, what's the best way to get this back in balance? What would you recommend?
It's all about coming back to the center. So it's all, now, I mentioned the 5 elements before, but think of it this way. So far, we've got the circle of yin and yang, correct? We've got yang at the top and yin at the bottom. Now, at the center of that, which is your balance point, it's called the Tai Chi, and that's where you're embodying yin and yang energies in balance. So when we say we're following the school of the stomach and spleen, what we're talking about is the earth element. And that earth element is your digestive ability, your digestive fire, your ability to choose foods really well, apply the art of cooking, and then to be able to digest and assimilate that. And your earth energy provides the yang energy, the yin energy. It also provides the wood, fire, earth, and metal. So it's about simplifying it, not getting too complicated or abstract. It's about actually just coming back to the center and getting this relationship with food and balance again, and trying new recipes, right? Because what you're doing at the moment is out of balance, quite frankly, right? If you've got the yin and yang polarities, you might be eating too much cold foods, right? Too much salads, too much fruits. Get the idea? That's a lot of people think that, you know, when people simplify diet, you know, oh, eat more salad. No, or eat more fruit. No, for some people, that's a disaster because you're giving them more yin food, more cooling food, and they've already got all these cold symptoms, right? So basically, if that's what's going on for you, a good place for everybody is to just start with soup, believe it or not. Soup is always going to be digestible. It's going to have a good balance of yin and yang. It's going to be easy on the digestive system. You're going to assimilate, and it's going to carry that qi and blood and that yang and yin energy to where the body needs it. The body has an intelligence. Sometimes you just need to get out of the way, just do some nice healing recipes, try some different things. That's the answer to your question. Is it's time to shift your orientation with what you've been doing in the past, perhaps for the last couple of years, and to start to try new dynamics in your dietary approach, to experiment, and to basically think about that earth center. Now, for instance, where you could start is just make a good pumpkin soup, right? Hopefully with a good stock. Maybe use some sea vegetables in your stock because that's going to build up the minerals, and add some ginger at the end. If you've got cold hands and cold feet, just start with a good old pumpkin soup. It's going to tonify, warm the center, the earth element, and that ginger is going to start to dissipate the cold out of the body. So, and you know, if you've got a lot of cold, think the warming herbs, ginger, you know, basil, etc. If you've got a lot of cold symptoms, think starting to use some more sauteed vegetables with using oil, like coconut oil, sesame oil, olive oil, right? And if you're not vegan, you know, butter, and there's other really good oils that we will teach you, fats and oils. Now, when you saute your vegetables with the oil, you get a much warmer temperature happening than just raw or steaming or boiling, right? And then if you put your slices of garlic and ginger and etc. in there, you've taken something that's yin, like green leafy vegetables, quite yin, and now you've applied what? Hot oil, fire, and warming herbs, garlic, basil, ginger, etc. Now you've got that yin and yang dynamic. You've got movement, you've got charge, you've got, see, it's not just like, oh, it's yin, like a salad. You've got that, you've combined yin and yang. It's the alchemy now. And that's when you get that polarity, and we're very much into doing, even when we make pickles, it's about polarity. And designing, you know, kind of menu plates about polarity and charge and movement, right? And providing yin and yang energies, right? So when you start to experiment with a bit, as I say, if you've got those symptoms at the moment, think ginger, garlic, warming, especially in the summertime, the winter time that you're going through in the northern, think warming soups. It's a good place to start, yeah?
Perfect. Thank you so much for that, Roger. The next question was, one of our viewers tonight has a problem with histamine-rich foods, but also an egg and nut allergy. So how would you treat this holistically? Well,
obviously, there's still a lot of foods that you can eat and apply the principles and learn the art of cooking so that your liver energy, basically in Chinese medicine, a lot of the allergies come from the liver energy, which has been really, really taxed since childhood. You know, some of the foods that we've been brought up with, modern westernized food, chemicalized foods, you know, foods that don't have that sort of vitality in them. It's a strange combination since childhood. Your liver is like an enzyme factory. And when that gets out of balance, or it doesn't have the enzymes to break things down and transmute, etc., then as you know, you get these heavy proteins circulating in the blood, and that gets the allergies happening. So you can, when you start to work on your liver, your wood element, through the perspective of Chinese medicine, you can start to smooth that qi, because we've got an enzyme-rich foods here. For instance, really focusing, apart from learning all of the food groups, but those fermented foods that we use on a regular basis, that's your secret to actually alleviating the symptoms of those allergies over the long term. It takes, 1 or 2 years, but really, if you start to do that, you'll find that the symptoms become so much less, right? To the point, quite frankly, that a lot of people, to a degree, can actually overcome completely. Some of them are genetic, as you know, it's not going to happen. But then other ones that are just from basically a liver dysfunctioning and rejuvenating that liver energy, they've overcome all of their allergies, right? So they no longer have to worry about this, that, and the other, and they can live a more free life and not out of, worry or fear out of particular things. Now, that does take time, and of course, there's sensitivities involved, right? But if you wanted one key thing to focus on is think rejuvenating the wood element, liver and gallbladder, think for high-quality fermented foods, think, again, it all comes back to that earth element, digestive fire, right? And coming back to natural foods and avoiding the industrialized, chemicalized Western diet.
Absolutely, absolutely. And particularly, again, so I did suffer from histamine issues as well back in the past, but when I joined Academy and started implementing these new protocols as well, and really for me started focusing on the earth element, that had a huge impact on histamine. And histamine levels, and particularly with intolerances to foods as well. If you work on your, as Roger mentioned, your liver, but also your gut, your spleen, then that's going to have a huge impact to increase your tolerance to certain foods as well, and reduce those kind of nasty reactions that you're getting. So it does take a little bit of time, but it is very possible to heal allergies, and you can do that with using food as medicine. And then the last question that we had was, can you recommend any foods or items to help cleanse the skin, whether from the inside out or directly kind of topically?
Well, Savannah related back in one of the slides to about a third of the way through the course, Inga shows everybody the powerful effect of a herb called Schizandra, right? And our students are given the 100-day Schizandra challenge, right? And this herb, and it's just a berry, right? And it's easy to get, and you make a tea out of it. It's got some very special features to it. It's got all of the 5 elements in it. So it's got the sour, bitter, salty, pungent sort of taste in it. The little sour, sweet dynamic to it. And it nourishes all 3 treasures. So in this curriculum, we really do quite often come from what's called the 3 treasures. We have our gene, we have our qi in our blood, and we have our shun, our spirit, right? And that's all housed in the chakra system of the body, or the energy production of the body. And so apart from actually learning new recipes and avoiding the things that trigger skin damage and being able to nourish the metal element, which is your lungs, and in Chinese medicine, your skin is actually controlled by the lung, or the metal. The skin is just seen as another lung, right? So apart from doing all that, Schizandra, boy, does that clear up skin problems, and it makes your skin very vibrant, and it's the #1 beauty herb in Taoist tonic herbal medicine, right? Schizandra. So get your hands on that, and you'll really start within like 4 or 5 days. You start to feel the effects of that, right? Now, just working on the earth element, the spleen also controls the flesh. So you'll notice that your flesh has more tone, more color, more vibrancy to it as well, right?
Thank you, Roger. Yeah, Schizandra is an absolute powerhouse of a herb, isn't it, as a tonic? And we have in our elixirs class, as Roger mentioned, the challenge, but we have some beautiful recipes that we make. We make a Schizandra lemonade and a tea as well. But also Inga provides a recipe for a Schizandra face mask. So you're kind of targeting your skin cleansing from within and from without as well. So yes, and we do have lots of other fantastic tonic herbs for helping your skin as well. And Pearl is another one of those that we showcase with you as well. We've got a great recipe for that. So I think that was all of our questions, but thank you so much for hanging on in there. I know we have gone over, but we did want to give you the chance to ask Roger your questions. So thank you so much for bearing with us. And Roger, thank you again for your incredible wisdom, and Savannah for helping navigate today and for sharing your experience at Academy as well. And thank you everyone for attending. We look forward to speaking with you very soon, and we'll be in touch. Do get in touch. Have a fantastic evening or afternoon, and we look forward to seeing you soon.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks for showing up, guys. Hope to see you all.